You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
You're watching West Hartford Community Television.
For the community, by the community.
Good evening. Welcome to As I See It, A Blind Woman's View. I am Andrea Giudice, your host, and I have with me my guide dog, who, as always, I'm not introducing because for his focus and our safety, no one else needs to know his name, and because if it gets used outside of this studio, then he might lose focus on his work. The series that I've been working on for the past few episodes, actually many episodes, has been the life of a guide dog and the life of the person to be matched with that guide dog and the steps they each have to go through to get to the point of partnership. So we met a puppy in training, and we talked to people who are using guide dogs, and we talked to people who have dogs that were trained, bred and raised to be guide dogs, but had a different career path and became career change dogs and have some other career. And the last little piece in that journey is one I never like to talk about or even think about, but it's a really important thing to talk about because it's an absolutely essential piece of this whole process, just as important as the puppy raisers and the guide dog trainers and all of the other steps that happen to get a dog and a person to be partners is what happens when that partnership needs to end. And unfortunately, I have not met anyone who has a sea tortoise as a guide. You might move through life really slowly, but you'd have your partner for a really long time. So there's something appealing about that. However, since land or sea tortoises are not in the business of being guide animals, we are using dogs. And the wonderful thing about dogs is too numerous to count, but the one thing that we do know about them is that their lifespan is not the same as a human's lifespan or even close, typically. So in the course of 8, 9, 10, 11 years, a guide dog goes from a 2-year-old or 18-month-old, newly trained, newly minted guide dog that's full of vim and vigor and is as spunky and energetic as they can be. At the end of the next 6, 8, 10 years, that dog is now, say, 8, 9, 10, 11, sometimes 12. And they have lived most of their life cycle. So they're ready for retirement. They're ready to join AARP and get their discount on their, Dunkin' Donuts, and they want a retirement and deserve a retirement. Unfortunately, for most of us who have guide dogs and are partnered with guide dogs, not much changes dramatically in the course of 8 to 10 years. The pace of walking, the activities, all the things that you do in your daily life that your dog needs to be a part of, those are all things that you're still doing pretty much at the same pace, generally speaking, in the course of the career of any given guide dog. And so as the dog approaches their 8th or 9th or 10th birthday, it's really time to think about what is their next step? What was retirement going to look like for them? When does that decision get made? How does that decision get made? And a lot of that is going to depend on, in this case, I'm going to talk about me since I cannot speak for anyone else. So there's a lot of factors that I need to think about. Where is my dog physically and emotionally? Are they still really healthy and bouncy at 8 or 9 or 10? Or are they really starting to be, I'm doing the work, but I'd really like to sleep a little later. I'd like to go to bed a little sooner. It'd be really okay if I chase sunbeams all day and you could go off and do your thing and come back and we could talk about it in the evening. So that's one factor. What is going on with the physical and psychological, emotional health of the dog? Then there's what is going on in the life of the handler. So if I have a dog who's 8 or 9, and they're my guide dog, and I'm about to start a really high-powered new job where I'm going to be traveling a lot, I have to really think about, is that a reasonable thing to ask this senior guide dog to do? We've had this really, things have been pretty similar, and all of a sudden I'm going to be traveling 80% of the time. And guess what? You get to do it too. This is what you say to your guide dog. And so that's a factor. What is happening in my life right now? And then another piece of this sort of puzzle that you try to figure out is, when do I want this dog to retire? What is I don't want the dog to have to do it again. In the past, it's been with one of my guide dogs, it was I didn't want Chip to have to go through another winter in Connecticut. So I knew that working backwards from October of the year that I was thinking about, I didn't want him working past the October of that year. So then it was time to talk to the guide dog school and say, okay, so if I want my dog to be retired by October of 2008, when do I need to submit my application so that you have time to find the right dog for me, so that you can schedule a time for me to come to class, so that I don't have this big gap between the retirement of one dog and the partnership with a successor dog. And even that is very individual. Some people feel very strongly that they want some time between the retirement of one dog and the partnership with a successor dog. And this is a really important word that I'm using. Successor is the term used to refer to any guide dog other than your first. I've heard people call them replacement dogs, and that's a term that's very unpleasant to hear as a guide dog user. No one will ever replace any of the guide dogs that I've had, and I'm on guide dog number 6. Clearly, I've had successor dogs. I've chosen not to change the mobility choice that I've made, but it's really important to think of them as successors, not replacements. And even though it's just words, and I know words are just words, but in this case, they have very powerful meaning behind them. So there's all these factors. It's like a big algebraic equation. I want my dog to retire by X date. I don't want to have a space between the retirement of my current guide and the partnership with my successor guide. I need to talk to my program to find out, how long do you feel it will take to find a dog that meets my specific needs, requirements, choices, recommendation. Some people feel very strongly they only want to work a certain breed or a certain color of dog, or they only want a boy, or they only want a girl, or they could be like me and they only want to work a dog that's huge. So you have to you can't just be like, okay, I want a guide dog in 3 months. I want it to be an enormous dog, and so here's my application. You have to give your program time to find the right dog for you. So all of these pieces to this puzzle, all these ingredients get put into this big pot, and you stir them up and you try to figure out what's the best recipe to make it all work so that it meets everybody's needs. And then, once you've put all those other ingredients into that pot and you're stirring it all up, there is the last ingredient, which is, where will my retired guide dog live once it's retired? And this is a huge, major, important question. Some people are able to keep their guide dog as a retired dog in their home. The dog becomes a pet, it gets spoiled, it's wonderful. They've got what they feel is the right situation emotionally, physically. Maybe there's another person in their world, or they're in a family where there's other humans that can sort of become the primary human for the retired guide. And so that's one option. Another option is that you, as the guide handler, designate a home for your retiring guide dog to go to. So I could decide that my guide dog has a really good relationship with, Uncle Bob or Aunt Jane, and that dog, I've talked to those people, that person, and they feel that they are equipped to take on a senior dog, which is not the same as adopting a puppy or a adolescent dog, and that another thing that's really important for me in this decision is, does the home that my retiring guide dog is going to, do they have the same, I want to say parenting style, but that's obviously not the right word, but they have the same pet care style that I do. so that are they going to do the same things? Do they put the same importance on the same things that I do? Because I want to make sure that the guide dog, even though they're retiring and they're not going to be my dog anymore, I want to make sure that they're going into a home that makes sense to me, that philosophically is the right place for me to put them. If there's not somebody in my world who is in a position to take the dog for any number of reasons, I can call the guide dog school and say, okay, Juno is retiring, and I'm not keeping Juno, and I don't have a placement for Juno, so I need your assistance in finding a home for Juno. And then what they will do is they will go back, usually first to the puppy raisers who raised Juno, and say, hey, Juno is now, 35 years old. No, I'm just trying to get my dog to hear that number a lot. Juno is now 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 and is retiring. Are you in a position to be able to take Juno back into your home? And many, many, many times they are delighted, and that's a fabulous full circle where the puppy came from their home, works their career, and goes back to their puppy raiser, and that can be absolutely wonderful. Sometimes the raiser says, well, I would love to, but I've already got 3 retired guide dogs and a retired breeder and a career change dog at home, and I've exceeded we're now into a kennel situation according to the licensing laws in my city, and I can't take another dog. Or maybe they'll say, it's not the right thing for us right now. We've moved on, or we can't deal with senior dogs, or whatever it is. This Juno can't come back to our home. Thankfully, what then happens is my guide dog school, Guide Dogs for the Blind, or any of the guide dog schools, will say, okay, so they'll go to this long list of people that they have that want to adopt a retired guide dog. They are recognizing that while it's wonderful to adopt a puppy and a dog that might career change at 18 months, that's also wonderful because you have a nice, young, active dog. But there are a lot of people that recognize the beauty in adopting a senior dog, particularly one that's worked and had this amazing career, and now it's your opportunity in adopting this dog to honor the work that they did in the time that they live out their retirement. And it's just amazing and wonderful. And I'm so grateful that there are people who recognize the beauty and specialness in adopting senior dogs, whether it's from a guide dog school or a shelter. Senior dogs bring a whole different dimension to a household. And so thankfully there's a lot of people who recognize that. So now you have this big soupy pot that's pretty messy, and it's full of all these decisions that you have to make and all these timetables that you're trying to balance, not to mention the unspeakable emotion that is accompanying all of these decisions. So everyone deals with all of those ingredients differently, and how they're going to decide what's the best way to complete this retirement dish that we're cooking up here in this pot. For me, I try to get to what are my absolute bottom line deal breakers. So I'll use the example of my dog Chip, who I absolutely knew I did not want him working through another winter. That was, for whatever reason, that became the most important thing to me in this whole decision process. So once I knew I had this date in my head of October of 2008, then it was okay. So now I have to work backwards. Call the school in October or actually at the spring before, so the spring of 2007, and say, I want to be able to retire my dog by October of 2008. When do you need me to submit my application? Recognizing that once that application is submitted, they could call me. I want Chip to retire in October, but they could call me in February of 2008 and say, Andrea, we have got what we think is just the perfect dog for you. It's the right size. It's got the right temperament. It's going to be perfect for your lifestyle. It's the right walking speed. This dog is ready right now. Now, my choice when that happens is to say, okay, we're not that far from the date I'd put in my head for retirement. I think this dog can handle retiring a little bit earlier than I'd expected. So I've got a retirement home in place. So I'm going to say yes to that February class and know that my dog retired, 6 or 7 or 8 months earlier than I had really hoped for. Or I can say, well, Chip is working great. He's got lots of energy. He's enthusiastic about his work. It's February. I want October. There's a lot of months between now and then. I'm going to pass on this dog, and I'm going to hope that another dog comes and is ready for me closer to October. So, in this soup that I'm making, that was what the driving decision was. It made all the other decisions. Is when I wanted the dog to retire. For other people, it may be they may come to a different thing being the most important decision that drives all the others. I don't want to go to class. They might say, well, I don't want to go to class too close to winter because coming back from class into winter is a pain. You really want more time to get to know your dog. So I want to go to class earlier. Or my dog is doing fine, so I'll just submit my application on their 10th birthday and see what happens. Or whatever thing they decide becomes their driving sort of force behind the whole process that is retiring a guide. So all of this is playing out in the mind of a guide dog user. And we are told when we get our dogs that dogs work on average 6 to 8 years. Now, we all know averages are just that. There are going to be dogs that work way longer than that and dogs that work less time than that. So what I can tell you is that as my current guide approaches his 8th birthday, I go, oh, no. We're not going to say that eight is bad because that means 6 years that he's been working, right? The average life of a working dog is 6 to 8 years. It's very hard, even though intellectually I understand my dog is working great. He's energetic. He loves his work. He's not slowing down. In any of the traveling that I do, there's never a point where he goes, oh, you go and I'll stay here and watch TV in the hotel room. But it's still hard not to start thinking, I have some very specific requirements, one of which is I really like to have a very large dog. And guide dogs in general are being made smaller and smaller. So I need to give my program fair notice that is a deal breaker for me in a successor dog. I want a big dog that's, I have a certain height range below which I won't go. My school needs to be given ample time to find not only a dog that's that size, but a dog that will work well with me. It can't just be any old 25-inch dog that comes along. It has to be the right 25-inch or 27-inch dog that comes along. So it's this very difficult thing of, I don't want to think about this dog retiring. In fact, like I said, we've been talking about 35 years of service ever since I got him, which of course is unrealistic and I don't truly expect, but I keep whispering the word just in case he decides to go for it. I don't want to even begin to think about retirement with a dog who's turning 8. But I also know that I don't want him to work I don't want him to work until it's hard for him to work. And I personally don't want a space between I want as little space as possible between the retirement of the current guide and the partnership with the successor guide. And as I talk about it, it all sounds like, well, just come on, just chill out. It's all good. And yes, I can hear my brothers right now. You overthink everything. It's true. I am an overthinker. But I also know that it's really important to have as much control over this as I can so that I'm doing my best to make the right decision so that the current dog working with me gets retired at a point where he's ready to retire and he's not working, because most of these guide dogs will work even if they're just exhausted, and they will drop in harness because their will to work, their work ethic, their desire to work for us is huge. And so even when it's hard for them, or they're feeling physically exhausted, or maybe they have to slow down a little bit, even if they really would rather be retired, many of them won't really stop working. Some of them are like really clear. I'm done. You pick up the harness, they run the other way. They start doing crazy things that tell you, I am so done with this job. But many of them aren't going to make it that easy for us because they have such a high work ethic and such a strong commitment to the work that they do, that as long as you pick up that harness, they're going to get into it. And they're going to guide you to the best of their ability, even when that may not be the best choice for them. And so I was talking about this with a friend of mine recently and just saying, oh God, his 8th birthday is coming up and what am I going to do? And they said, have you ever done a show about this? And I said, well, I don't know. Does anyone really want to hear about all this? And she said, well, I don't know, I do. So maybe other people do. And that's why I'm talking about it. And also because when I thought about this whole series that I've done about the path of a puppy to a guide and a person from learning their mobility skills with their long cane to being partnered with a guide, all of those things are exciting and challenging and really, really cool. But there's also this other piece. And it is something that's very important to talk about because I know that it's part of every partnership. And I am on dog number 6, and no, it doesn't get easier. I was thinking maybe after dog number 2, that dog number 3, it would get easier, but not so much. And I will tell you all honestly that each time I retire a guide dog, I go through a period of time going, I'm not going to do it again. I can't go through the pain. It feels like, I've tried so hard to find words to describe this. It's like someo's taking out your soul, and then they put it on the street, and then 5 trucks come and run it over, and then they back up and they do it again. It's just gut-wrenching. And you think, what? Why am I doing this? I made this choice. I did this, so to speak, with my eyes wide open. And why would I do this again? Or perhaps one of the times between my first dog and my first successor dog, I said, okay, I'm going to work this second dog. I will feed her and take care of her, and I will treat her with respect, but I absolutely will not love her. She will be a tool. That was my plan. It didn't work at all. So as I think even sort of peek around the corner at the thought of retirement of this guide, I just know that I've got to make all these hard decisions, and I've got to really figure out what is the best thing for him and the best thing for me. But at the bottom of at the end of the day, the bottom line is that this amazing, remarkable, astoundingly intelligent dog that is lying next to me is a mobility tool. If I had a broken long cane, I would have to get a new cane. If I used a wheelchair and it became so to the point where it couldn't safely hold me, I'd have to get a new wheelchair. And while I think that people can't imagine being as attached to something that's not animate, like a cane or a wheelchair, as opposed to a dog, the reality is that the whole purpose that this dog lies beside me, all of the training and the love and the finances that went into creating this guide dog, were so that I could have increased, enhanced independence. And if for whatever reason, whether it's because of an event that happened or health or his age or his just deciding I'm done with this stressful job, that's no longer something he can do, that's not bad. That doesn't make him a bad dog. But it does mean that my independence is not being enhanced because the job that this dog does isn't being done. And when I say those words out loud, it makes me feel like I sound cold. And I assure you that I couldn't love my guide dog more if I tried. But I also know that he is, in fact, also there to perform a job. And if he can't do that job, then unfortunately some other dog has to come in and do that job. So all of this goes into this big pot, this big messy soup that I've made, which is the retirement of a guide dog. I don't recommend having this soup regularly. It's really rather intense. And so these are all the things that even though my dog is healthy and bouncy and no one ever guesses that he's about to approach his 8th birthday, these are things that are heavily on my mind at times, especially because my dog is approaching his 8th birthday. And so I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk about this because it is, in fact, the closure that brings the circle, because now somewhere out there in the next year or so will be born a puppy that I won't know anything about. And it will go to its puppy raiser, like you saw here with Karen and Ian, who's now actively guiding somebody. And that puppy will get raised and trained and socialized, and it will go back to the guide dog school, and it will go with the instructors, like the instructor that we talked to here. and it'll learn all those amazing things. And then at some point in the next 35 years, in the next period of time, that dog that I never knew that was born as a little tiny 8, 9, 10 ounce puppy will be my next partner. And that's exciting and wonderful and amazing and horrifying all at the same time. And that's why this retirement soup that we made is so messy. Because there's nothing about it that's simple or clinical or easy or straightforward. And it's different with every dog. Because every dog has different needs. They retire at different times. I know people who've so I'm in something like my 33rd or 4th year of working dogs. I'm on dog number 6. I know someone who's worked dogs twice as long as me and is on dog number 6. So there's no way of knowing how, when you pick up that harness handle for the first time and your dog is 18 months old or 20 months old or 24 months old, there's no way of knowing for sure how long that's going to last. But that is the beauty of being partnered with something that is alive. And as I said, until they put tortoises into service and we can, be partnered with them for 100 years, this is the story that every guide dog user has to tell. And it's really important that that everyone understands that that's a piece of it. There's the joy and there's the sadness and there's that joy and that sadness are at heights and depths that are indescribable. So that's why we're talking about this tonight. And so I think that it's really important for people to remember that when you're thinking about, when you know somebody who's retiring a guide dog and you love that guide dog and you think, oh, that guide dog can come live with me. If you're not chosen to be the home where that guide dog goes, it needs to not, please don't take that personally. It has a lot to do with, there's so many factors that go into it. What the dog needs emotionally, what I need emotionally. Can I tolerate and can I withstand the emotion of seeing that dog regularly, or does it need to go someplace where I'm not going to be, visiting it regularly? Can that dog withstand the emotion of me getting a successor dog and it no longer being the active guide? So many things go into it. So it's a really amazing thing. I'm really grateful that everyone tuned in. I am Andrea Giudice, and this is As I See It, A Blind Woman's View. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned.